And it's connecting. We're now streaming.
So we're good. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this special edition of Pirate Parents Live. My name is Chris Stansberry. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for the Division of Student Affairs here at East Carolina. And we continue through this virtual 2020 and our Pirate Parents Live here, even though as the fall semester has wrapped up, we felt this was a very important conversation for us to have, especially with our parents and families as our students have come back home. Some after semester one, some after multiple semesters. I know I've got a first year freshman who is now back home after his first semester rather, of living in the residence hall. It's been an interesting semester. That's about the best we could come up with. Is it's been interesting, and we continue to figure ways through navigating this time, and I'm sure you all are too. First and foremost, we want to start off here from ECU and wish each of you happy and safe, healthy winter break coming up, and we are working hard to get ready for the spring, and we hope that the students get a little time away, that the families get a little bit of time together, and that it's positive. And that's hopefully what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is how you can make the most of that time and make it quality time, but also kind of maybe reduce and identify some of the stressors that might be going on. So it is Pirate Parents Live, and so if you're watching the live edition, we do have some folks that are monitoring the chat. We do have folks that are around campus from their offices that are monitoring, and we'll be adding in either on Facebook or other comments and answers to questions. We may even get a few of them that are fed to us in our respective places, and we may pose to our panelists that we have today. If you're watching the archived edition and you have a question that comes up, go ahead and pop it in there. Feel free to reach out to Carter out Parent Family Programs. She's a great resource for our parents and family to have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. We'll get into the questions right after that again, but if you have comments and questions, please feel free to be part of our program for the next 20-25 minutes or so. Let's start with Valerie. If you don't mind, introduce yourself, tell folks listening a little bit about you.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Kistler Van Reed. I serve as director of the Center for Counseling and Student Development. I've been director for about 6 years, but I've been on staff as a staff counselor since 1997. And I'm a licensed psychologist. I don't see as many clients anymore, but certainly work with all of our staff to serve our students in terms of mental health services.
Thank you, Valerie. Jay?
Hi, I'm Jay Jacobs. I am the Health Promotion Project Manager in Student Health. I have been in this position for 3 months now, but I've been at the university as both a student and a professional person since probably 2010. So.
Awesome. Stephen?
Hey, y'all. My name's Stephen Trotter. I serve as the Associate Director over the Wellness and Fitness areas in the Department of Campus Rec and Wellness. I also serve as the Chair of the Wellbeing Collective, which is our university-wide committee for student and faculty and staff well-being. And I've been at ECU going on 2 years, so I'll hit my 2-year mark coming up in the spring.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Lauren?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Thorne. I'm one of the associate deans in the Dean of Students office. My background is actually mental health and counseling. I worked with Valerie in the counseling center when I first came back to ECU. And so I'm a licensed clinical social worker, but I have been supporting students in the Dean of Students office for about the past 5 years. Really glad we're having this conversation. Love talking with parents and being able to sort of acknowledge the unique situation of being in the pandemic right now and how it's impacting our mental health and transitioning back home for the winter break.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Each of you mentioned your background, by the way. In the virtual world, I can have my own background. This is not the 5-star hotel that I live in, but I get to choose a 5-star hotel that I want as my background. So it gives me a sense of mental health and feeling better about myself. Let's move on to the serious part of this conversation. I want to start with you, Valerie, with this one. Sharing information with the Vice Chancellor and the leadership of the university today, just about the trends and things that are going on related to mental health. A lot of folks, it's been a trend. Mental health has been on the forefront. Wellness has been on the forefront, especially for our college students. In this COVID environment, it adds an extra factor to it. If you don't mind, kind of kick us off and talk a little bit about some of the trends that you've seen from your shop and in the counseling center.
Sure. And so what I share with Dr. Hardy is that we have been seeing an increase in students seeking services over the past several years, which is nothing different from what's going on nationwide. Um, but what I would say we've seen different with COVID is, of course, we had to make that transition to telemental health, and no one knew for sure how well that was going to go. I think our staff and our students have both been a little bit surprised at how they've been able to make that connection, and we've been serving students over video since March 30th and have been doing so steadily. We joke that we didn't really have the summer that we normally have because we were more accessible. And so I think in terms of the trends, I was talking with one of the counselors about that yesterday. What we've really seen is a lot of gratitude from students. I think I've covered the phones at times, I've covered crisis at times. I kind of do a little bit of everything at this point. And the students are just so thankful that we're there. And I think, not that they weren't in the past, but there's a new appreciation for it. We're seeing some, concerns with respect to financial isolation. And there have been some concerns about academics. You mentioned that earlier. It has been a huge adjustment to one, switch to online learning for those who weren't used to it. But the other piece was the pace at which students had to work with that 2-block system. So anyway, we've been there to support students through those many challenges, and they have sought that support. The other thing I will mention is that I've seen this a little bit through the listserv too, is that for some students, maybe they're also experiencing some additional support that they wouldn't have otherwise because they're at home. So for some students, having that family close by during college has been a benefit. So it's been a mix in terms of what we've seen.
Thank you for that, Valerie. And you mentioned the teletherapy side, Jay, in student health. I think that's another thing, is accessibility to our students. Kind of talk about it from that side, maybe that parents and families don't understand that while it seems like the world is shutting down, our access for the students may be even higher than it has been before.
For sure. We definitely see a lot of patients through telehealth. We have quite a few providers that do that every day, and they are, designated to it on a week-by-week basis to make sure that we still are able to provide those services for students. And they may be in Greenville, they may be back at home, but they're still able to access their providers, which is really important at this time.
And Lauren, for you were very involved with the quarantine isolation process with a lot of the things that went on in the fall. And Valerie kind of alluded a little bit to that about isolation. We use quarantine and isolation almost in a medical terminology and in a health and human services technology, but isolation is a different feeling that students are experiencing. And that has definitely something that's come to the top for you and the folks you've interacted with.
Definitely. I mean, I think the challenge is that, especially for our students who were asked to quarantine because of exposure or isolate after they tested positive, there are a lot of emotions tied with that. There's, we kind of joked in the past about sort of FOMO, fear of missing out, but for many of our students, there's so much wrapped up with being able to connect with their peers, to be concerned about getting behind in classes, to get behind in internship hours with our professional students or those who are close to graduation. And so there's a lot of pressure. And then to feel the emotions associated with, okay, I want to do the right thing, or maybe I did all the right things and I still got sick, or I still had to got exposed and had to quarantine. That can be incredibly frustrating. And so I think for many students, especially, acknowledging our incoming freshmen or first year students who sort of lost their senior year of high school and then now have also lost essentially their first year of college, there's just a lot of disappointment with what's being asked of them, that it goes against what we typically see our college students doing, and a lot of challenges balancing all of those expectations and while kind of watching their peers make decisions that may be counterintuitive to what they feel like they should be doing.
Stephen, how about you from the wellness side of things? Have you seen some trends going either in a positive or negative manner maybe in the last couple of months?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really a way or a time for well-being and wellness to kind of shine and come to the forefront. Because with that, we launched our well-being coaching program back in January and did a full launch in August. And we've been seeing everyone through Zoom and various telecoaching aspects. And we have a great national board certified health and wellness coach on staff. But with our virtual engagements, I mean, our numbers are actually been really, really well attended. And with our weekly virtual programs we've had in the fall semester, we've had over 7,000 participate in our virtual weekly programs. Our virtual movement programs like group fitness has really been flourishing. And we started this campaign last year pre-COVID of meeting people where they are. And part of it is ECU we're known for distance education to begin with. You know, we had a large online presence, and I have a background working in remote work and helping universities transition to this. And so it's really an opportunity for us to truly meet people where they are, not only just theoretically, but physically.
And I think it's one of those, it's kind of it's a catch-22, right? Because we want the collegiate experience to be as interactive, engaging, interpersonal, face-to-face as much as possible. In the world that we're in now, we can't do that. And so we have to create these mechanisms where we have teletherapy and telehealth and the virtual environments that you speak about. But yet we also don't want them to get so comfortable in that they can't transition back whenever, and I'm not even going to say normal because I don't even know what normal is anymore, whenever we get back to doing business as we should be. But let's, for the parents and families that are watching, so let's transition a little bit now as their student has come back home. Either they were living in the residence hall, they were part of our 800 that lived in the hall. Maybe they came back during the course of the semester at some point in time. Maybe they were an off-campus student that has gone back home and they're home for a little bit of that time. And this is for anybody that wants to jump in. Let's talk about some of the things that maybe mom, dad, family members might see. What are some signs? You know, Valerie, you talked about stressors. What are some of the signs that anxiety, stress, depression, how will that maybe perhaps come out in a young adult? And maybe, Valerie, I'll get it to start with you, but I welcome others to jump in.
Sure. So some of what we might expect to see is that students might be more socially withdrawn. So they might even not really have that interest, even connecting technologically if they could. They might spend more time in their room. And so that increases that isolation. And so just kind of a sense of withdrawal. There can be, with respect to anxiety, there can be a lot of worries. We all have a lot of worries in this world, but some of them may be excessive. And so the anxiety may manifest itself that way. And, you know, some irritability and all of that too, with frustration as this goes on longer and longer, and we don't know when, you know, we might expect some things to change. And so all of those things are you know, things that parents could see. And I think what becomes really important is trying to normalize that and help the student not feel like they're alone in this. We're all struggling. And so their experience of it is nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. And instead we would, with the families, try to encourage some conversation around that. And one of the things that you can do is to talk about what has been lost. And so even if you don't know somebody who has been sickened or has passed away, we still have all experienced loss during this time. And that can be a place where you can connect. And it can be small things like, you know, just that sense of freedom. Like, well, we used to go out to eat every weekend and now we can't. And, you know, we did that as a family. So you can talk about that as a loss, but then also talk about, well, what are ways that we can kind of create that in this new temporary environment, because it will end, right, at some point. So those are some of the thoughts I have.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that too, Valerie, especially around the holidays where there's so much nostalgia and traditions and things that, you know, family expectations. And I know, you know, personally, as well as friends, like having to make that tough decision of like, do we get together as a family? How do we navigate this? And a lot of emotions and, you know, feelings tied up with that too, that can certainly increase some of the anxiety or the depression, the loneliness with not being able to see extended family, not feeling safe traveling. I think all of that has been almost exacerbated because of this. And so I would definitely say, you know, with parents, it would be normal to have those moments where it's you know, okay to be sad about it, but then also a great opportunity to develop new traditions or, you know, temporary traditions of, okay, how are we still going to make this time special for us, and how are we still going to acknowledge what we're able to do as a family, even if it's just as a smaller family unit and not necessarily the extended family. And so I think it's really healthy to talk about these things and to you know, to normalize those conversations and hopefully be able to make it not where we're just sweeping it under the rug, but really giving our young adults opportunities to kind of see and express that as well.
Stephen, I wonder, let's break that down even a little bit further. Let's say somebody who's watching this is going to go, I'm not a clinical therapist. I'm not a professional in this field. Let's break it down really, really simple. What are some suggestions or tips to just get the conversation started? How as a family member or parent, do I engage my student in this conversation? Because admittedly, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're kind of talking about that, it reminded me of I read a lot of Brene Brown's books, which I'm sure a lot of people do, but really around empathy and the difference between empathy and sympathy, and just learning that it's about walking alongside of someone, and you don't always have to respond or have an answer. You just need to have a presence. And if you're looking for and I'm always like, I guess the way I operate is I'm very like strategizing, and everything that I do, it's one of my top 5 strengths. But turn it into activities. And if you we've all got fatigue, and if you don't know where to start, use it as a game. There's plenty of free online conversation starters that you can start with your friends, family, and those around you. That's just random questions that you ask, and those conversations lead into other things. And after you've pulled about 2 or 3 questions, you really don't need those questions anymore. And, or even if it's like, I do this a lot, which is why I go to this. If I'm experiencing higher levels of stress or anxiety and don't know where to start, I write everything down, and I start drawing lines of the things that I have control over and I don't have control over. And then I write out goals and action plans for the things that I have control over. And that is a great activity to do with each other too. And it's be present and be available with that empathy, and know that you don't have to respond, and turn to the Google machine and find some of those questions to get the conversation started if you don't know where to start.
And I probably should have said this from the get-go. Why don't you, I'll make you a little bit of Vanna White. Why don't you explain what's behind you, so that maybe folks behind you are wondering what those key words are and how that applies to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the words on my screen are my strengths as set by Clifton Strengths Finders. And many of you watching probably that work in organizations, Gallup and Clifton Strengths is used heavily in universities and in workforces around the world. And it really identifies what your top 5 strengths are. It builds off from talent, and everyone has talent. You're born with talent. And as you go throughout life, if you're into exercise and movement, just like you work your muscles, they grow. If you invest in your strengths, they grow. And where it ties into well-being is strengths-based, ties directly into well-being. It's the research shows it goes into hope, it goes into academic success, student success, and it's a full matrix coming together. And strengths is directly tied to our well-being, because if we spend time doing the things that we are good at, we have a total overall well-being improvement. And part of which one of the things we're launching in January is our new Wellbeing Hub, and bringing our new campaign of Pirates Thrive. And we know that we're going to be surviving at times in life. We know we're going to be striving during times of life, and we know when we're going to be thriving in life. And it's not an end destination. It's a needle that moves back and forth. And we're really bringing the forefront. And we're excited about the new Wellbeing Hub and the Pirates Thrive website and our new overall holistic well-being, and it's customized to you.
So I want to throw this out there, and it's for anybody who wants to jump in here. So as a parent myself of a college student, for other parents and family members, for the entire life that they have raised their student, part of that instinct is I see them physically or mentally struggling. My job is to fix. My job is to fix. I don't want them to hurt anymore. I want to fix. In some of these situations, some of the best, I think, advice is, and you kind of both touched on it, was one, be available, but also if somebody would talk about the importance of being a strong listener and not necessarily needing to be the fixer.
Yeah, I can jump in there, because I think something Stephen said really rings true in terms of activities or having kind of, I guess, conversation starters. And that is that gives you a place to connect with your student. And so if you sit down and try to force the conversation or have a conversation or have all the answers, it's probably going to go nowhere, right? And so I think that's the other thing, is sometimes you need to be available when they're available. I remember my mom saying that sometimes my brother would be ready to talk at 10 o'clock when she was ready to go to bed. Well, if he's ready to talk, then that's the time to listen, because then you can really get that good information, provide the support that they're needing at that time. And so sometimes playing a game or driving in the car allows that too. You're not looking at each other, and that conversation can kind of flow. So I think that readiness is a factor, and not trying to force things. And you're absolutely right, Chris, that you're not expected to have all the answers. The problems get harder as they get older. And so just knowing that you're a non-judgmental support who's in their corner is really important. And you might provide some tidbits of wisdom or advice here and there, and they can take it or not. But really letting them know that you're there for them is really the key thing.
Yeah, I saw a great, I guess, a post on social media recently that talked about kind of the importance of starting those conversations even at younger ages. Particularly, we think about kind of middle school, high school, setting the stage for, how we support as parents as they get older. And one of the first questions asking, your child when you engage them in these conversations is, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to offer advice, or do you want me to intervene? And kind of being able to let them determine, I really just need you to listen right now, or actually, yeah, I am seeking advice, or I want to intervene, but I'm not quite sure how. And, being able to let them make that decision of what's that level of involvement. I think also one of the things to remember as we talk about sort of the academic concerns, or, things that could be tied back to university issues or problems, is that there are a lot of great staff members who are still here and working, and would be happy to have these conversations too. So maybe it is something where grades are less than ideal, or, your student is questioning the major and isn't quite sure what to do. And so we have wonderful professionals who are trained and ready, and oftentimes can initiate those conversations in a way that is more easily accepted than necessarily the parent trying to force that particular topic or matter. So it's a great reminder of using those resources, and knowing that even though it is getting towards the end of the semester and things are closing down, but there are still many of us that are available to help provide support and be able to help initiate some of those discussions.
So just a quick recap where we are here on Pirate Parents Live. We're talking about mental health and well-being as our students have transitioned back. Many of them going back home to spend time with their families during this winter break. It's a little bit of an extended break. The semester won't start until January 19th, so it's a little bit more time at home with family. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes more is not always the best, and you have to kind of navigate through that. If you're watching the live edition, feel free to put some questions and comments in there. We've got folks paying attention to the chat and can reply, or we may even feed some of them to our panelists. If you're watching archive-wise, feel free to reach out to Parent Family Programs. Carter Fenwick is a great resource for our parents and family. If you have questions, make sure you get connected to the parent portal if you're not already. Another great resource for finding out ways to connect your student with good resources on campus too. For Jay and for Stephen, in your respective areas, a lot of times people might think campus rec and wellness, they might think student health, you're treating the physical components. But I think it almost has now all become merged together, because I'm sure, Jay, from you all in student health, you're introducing and dealing with kind of the complete issue of the student. Talk a little bit about, for both of you, some of the interactions that you've seen with students and some of the ways that you're kind of offering to help them.
Okay, I'll go first. So I think that the mental state of a person can affect their physical health. So it's important to kind of look at that whole person. Maybe they aren't ready to take this step. Maybe they aren't in a place where they're able to accept what's going on or whatever. And so I think that our providers are very in tune, and they're able to really kind of help the students navigate, okay, you might not be ready for this step, but can we start here? Or kind of taking them step by step at a pace that they're comfortable for, kind of like you would do a conversation. If the person's not ready for the conversation, maybe you take a step back, and then you're like, okay, well, maybe we can't talk about this yet, but we can talk about this side street over here, and eventually get to the same destination. So I think that it's a way to find that balance between, okay, yes, we're here to treat your physical, but how can we get your mental with your physical, or, you know, what are you really worried about? Is it that, you know, your knee hurts, or, you know, did you just need to talk to somebody? So I think there's a little combination of both going on here that we've seen with students.
Stephen?
Yeah, and absolutely, to add to that, and it's really, I was thinking about just a couple weeks ago, I wrote an article for a magazine on buyer personas, and it's that customized approach and knowing, for those of you who work in the corporate world, you probably know KYC, know your client, know your customer, and that's what we have to do here, because we can't be everything to everyone, but we have to be something for each person. And some people come in for different reasons and come see us for different reasons, and some people don't know why they're there. And it's creating those channels and creating those avenues so that we're able to deliver that customized experience. And one of the things that come to mind is that really that social well-being aspect is really what we're really pushing and trying to serve right now. And social well-being, and it's as simply put as the quality of relationships in our lives, and it's so important. And when we look at the research, social well-being actually has more impact on our overall well-being than our financial well-being, you know, once you get your basic needs met. And at a time where we all, no matter who we are, we all have Zoom fatigue, and we all have different fatigue. And sometimes at the end of the day, like, you know, if even myself, if I've been in meetings, I've been on calls, I've been doing presentations, the last thing I want to do is talk to somebody at 7 o'clock at night. But it's being able to serve that and provide those outlets. And for those students, or for anyone that likes the movement piece and the exercise piece, you know, I tell a lot of people that I work with, whether it's universities or health clubs, that when people walk through the doors of a recreation and wellness center, part of the reason that they're walking through is to forget the reality of everything outside of those doors. And so when people step foot or go into a facility that's recreation based, the thoughts and the worries are left at the door, because for that 30 minutes, for that 45 minutes, for however long you're there, nothing else matters. And it's that reality escape, and it's that fulfillment. And, you know, the two other pieces I'll mention is if, you know, one of the services we provided a network across campus, is that well-being coaching. And if you don't know where to start there, and we'll get you to the right people. And so that's kind of the aspect of it. And one of the other solutions that we've worked on from our Wellbeing Collective that will actually be, it's currently live, so your students can sign up for it now, but we'll be fully rolling it out in the spring, is the Better You app, which is an app on your smartphone that you're able to set goals around education and mindfulness and social well-being, physical well-being, and it just works in the background because we want to limit barriers to entry, and then it rewards you for meeting those goals, and it helps you align to what matters most important to you, which is most important, because we're not creating a blanket approach for everyone. We want that customized approach for each individual.
And I think it's important, first of all, part of the purpose of this program is to empower our parents and families. We want to make sure that you're aware of options that are available to you while you're at home, but we also want to make sure that you know some of the things that we've got going on here at ECU when you send your student to us. I think, you know, I'm going to put Lauren on the spot for this, but that just because she's kind of had a foot in multiple offices in this capacity. Our offices, especially within student affairs, are very intertwined from the Dean of Students, Student Health, Counseling, Campus Rec, and Wellness. The folks within those areas, y'all talk a lot. You communicate, you're sharing information. Why is that so important that the offices are really well connected? Because, well, one obvious answer is some of you may see the same student that would come through. But what are some of the other reasons why that's so important?
I mean, I think it's to make sure that we're utilizing, you know, ECU's resources and our efforts to make sure that we're not duplicating things across campus. And it allows us to each kind of specialize in our own areas, but then also be knowledgeable and make those referrals, make those, referrals over to other services and resources. Sorry, I've got a full desk over here. And so it just helps us that when we meet with a student individually, it's not just pulling from my own personal knowledge and services that we're providing out of our office, but also saying, let me connect you with this person. And because you have that personal and professional relationship, you can make that connection point and immediately kind of get them plugged into other things that are going to be beneficial. So I think with all of that, it just allows us to better serve the students, which is what we're here for. We want to make sure that if there's an opportunity to connect them with the things that are going on, that they can take full advantage of everything we have here on campus.
And Chris, if I could just jump in here, because I do want to draw a distinction in terms of how the counseling center networks with other
Yes.
offices. Of course, all of our services are confidential, so we're not able to share information with any of the other offices on campus, faculty, anybody, even families, as you know, if the student's over the age of 18 without the student's permission. So the student's really in the driver's seat. And they will sometimes ask us to share information with faculty or the Dean of Students office or things like that. We have forms they can sign even electronically now that allow us to communicate, to provide support to, or provide information so that these other offices can support them in their best interest. So I did just want to make that quick distinction. And my thought on why it's so important that all of these offices communicate well is it really does create a safety net on campus, that we have that ability to look out for a student who's maybe slipping through the cracks or people are concerned about. And then we have that network that can step up and, as Lauren said, kind of step in and provide support in its specialized area.
Well,
yeah, sorry, I was gonna plug ECU Cares really quickly because I know Dr. Roeder would be upset if I left without without doing that, with such a great connection point. So ECU Cares is a great example of that, where it's led by our other associate dean in the Dean of Students office, really a hub of being able to support students and then be that middle spoke of a wheel of different offices and networks here on campus. And so family members, if they do have a student that they're concerned about, whether that be, during the academic year or, outside of those times, there's always an opportunity to share that information with the Dean of Students office through our website, which is ecucares.ecu.edu. Thank you, Carter, for putting it in the chat. And so just a lot of great resources listed there as well that are campus partners that we work closely with.
And I mentioned the groups that are here, but there's many others. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention Campus Living and all of its partners that go across from the coordinators and RAs all the way up to the administrators there. Our police department, I think that's another one of the areas where maybe parents don't necessarily always know, is that all of these areas train together. They communicate, they know. And I've seen in a time where I would say would be a normal environment, where you'd be walking across campus and you might see a student sitting on a bench who's crying. People don't just walk by those students. They walk up to them. And I think from the counseling center, DOS, and other areas, they've kind of been told, here's some things you could say. Go up and not say, what's wrong with you? Because that can be a very, pointed question that puts somebody on a defensive versus, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? And opening that, but they won't just walk by those students. And a lot of times I've seen our staff walk with somebody to the counseling center, walk with somebody to the Dean of Students office. And I've seen police officers doing that. So I think that some of that embracing community that ECU offers, that really, I don't know if it's everywhere, but I know it's definitely on our campus. And I think that is something special. Jay brought up a really good point a little bit ago. And Stephen, I want to come to you, and maybe Valerie or Lauren can jump in, is that a lot of time the mental health will impact the physical health. So while students are at home, can you offer up some suggestions? Maybe we're limited because the world is still limited right now. What are some ways that they can be active? What are some ways that they can do some things in a physical manner that may help them on the mental health side?
Yeah, one of the things that I'll kind of start with is, and if you don't remember anything that I say, remember this: find something you enjoy. And I was, for our student affairs on deck article, I just wrote a article on self-care. And I was like, it amazes me the people that hate running and yet they choose to run for exercise. And if you're going to do movement, it's, find movement that you actually enjoy. And if you're able to get outside, get the fresh air. And if you're able to, whether it's within your household or with your neighbors, take midday walks around the neighborhood. And from the movement world, our entire consumer behavior has changed. People are not exercising for long periods of time or intensity, it's more frequent throughout the day now, because our entire world has shifted, and we're not, for a lot of us, we're not in cars for an hour to 2 hours a day if we're living in cities, and we're not commuting, and our entire day has changed. And so our lifestyle kind of has to adapt to do that, because otherwise it's not sustainable. But I think, for one, finding movement that you enjoy, and one of our the resources that we've been able to do in Campus Rec and Wellness is Campus Recreation and Wellness is provide our partnership with Less Meals on Demand. So it's 60 days of free. There's over 1,000 movement opportunities from various formats that we have available that you can sign up for. And you can do that from your smartphone, from your TV, wherever. But I mean, get outside and find movement that you enjoy.
And I think that's important, the find what you enjoy piece of it, because it also doesn't have to consume you. It doesn't have to be something you do for 3 hours a day, but it may be, and Valerie, I'll ask you this, sometimes even when you're around family, and now some of them for this extended period, it's going to be 6-7 weeks, which is definitely, some of them have been on their own since July when they moved in or were in apartment complexes or whatever it was. But there is some value in finding some time to yourself. Maybe too much family can be too much family.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so I like what Stephen said about movement. I like the other bit about getting outside. We know that fresh air, sunlight, those are all really important things too. And I do think it's important that you're not setting a goal of 3 hours or even 30 minutes. Anything you're doing to move is maybe more than you were doing before. So setting reasonable goals and being active. And yes, I would say spending some time alone and even walking or exercising, you may find some kind of new insights into yourself. Because I think that's one of the things that, while we feel at times kind of trapped in this situation that we're in, there are some positives that come of it as well. There may be an increased opportunity for some self-improvement or finding new interests or focusing on maybe some aspects of ourselves that we haven't had as much time or attention for. So I would say, one, prioritize your health. Stephen talked about movement. I would say focusing on, in other areas like sleep and healthy eating, trying to set a routine. Those are all really important, we know as well. And then maybe pick up something like journaling or meditation or some kind of artistic creativity or whatever as well. So there's some new things that can be picked up or developed during this time as well that can be carried forward.
So we're coming up on about 40 minutes. And I want to get ready to wrap up here in just a second, but I want to kind of let folks know. So we're not, most everybody's in their office. I'm not in my 5-star hotel, but we're all working to get ready for the spring. And we know that is going to be another bit of a challenging time. There's going to be, and the reason I bring this up, and this for anybody who wants to jump in, is you may start to see some anxiety and stress towards the back end of this break, where they may have to go back, where they were not, maybe it wasn't the best experience, and they're still trying to navigate what this looks like. And who knows what COVID environment will be tomorrow, let alone 4 or 5 weeks from now, and that type of thing. And then academics, obviously they're here for that education. We want to make sure that they're set up to succeed. So just some general thoughts maybe for parents, or some advice for parents and families as they go through this break. What are some things that they maybe need to keep on their radar?
I'll jump in here, as I've had several conversations with parents over the last couple of days who have been weighing the decision of, what is spring going to look like? Tuition bills were due, I think, yesterday, and we spoke with several families that were kind of like, it's a big, commitment financially for us to send our student there, not quite knowing what January is going to look like. And we understand that. I think I will say, from a logistics and from certainly a support standpoint, we feel very confident going into the spring. We feel really good about how things are set up. We feel good about the resources and the services that we were able to the options we're able to provide. We learned a lot from the fall. I think we can all collectively say that we learned a lot, but particularly those of us who are kind of on the front line, it was a huge learning curve. And so what I'd like to say is that, we feel very optimistic about being able to provide quality education and services and programs for the students who are here in Greenville and those that will be on campus. And so we understand that that's a lot to for parents to kind of buy into, but we also are feeling really good about it and are feeling very optimistic about how things are looking for the spring.
And I'm gonna get back to that in just a second. That's a good point, Lauren, but made me think of something. Valerie, as we talk about these conversations that parents or families might want to have with their student, it's probably important not to have every conversation be about this, right? You know, have a little bit now that they transition to home. Maybe if you see something that's a little bit off, have the conversation just before they go back, maybe have a conversation, but every conversation doesn't need to be about this.
No, that's exactly right. And I think Lauren talked about this a little bit earlier, that this is also holiday time and traditions and all of that kind of stuff. So try to enjoy yourselves, try to have some non-COVID conversations, and remember that, again, this is temporary, and trying to, you know, I guess mindfulness is a piece of this. Be in the moment and enjoy this break time, this extended time together. And one of the things that I think is really important too is to know that the services that are available. We talked about that before. The counseling center is offering kind of extended crisis services during this time. We do take a break when the university closes for like 10 or 11 days. And I think that Carter's going to put in the chat or in the family portal a lot of emergency resources too. So I did want to make sure that I mentioned that as well, Chris.
Thank you. And so I want to kind of pose a last question to everybody, and it's pretty open. I'm going to let you go wherever you want. Jay, I'll start with you. I know you had some technical glitches, but I'm glad that you're back with us. Just kind of in a closing thought, I'm going to borrow a phrase Stephen said. If you don't remember anything of what we talked about, remember this one thing. Maybe from each of your perspectives, Jay, then Lauren, then Valerie, and Stephen. That's kind of the way you line up on my screen. Let's go with what is maybe that one takeaway that parents may hear today that you want them to take away with them. Jay?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily my area, but you know, understanding the comfortability of someone or your students to have the conversation when they're ready, or, you know, however it comes to them to talk to you about it, you know, just be open and willing to not just hear what they say, but listen to what they're saying, take it in and figure out how to navigate from there. And also, that there are tons of services here that are waiting and willing to help students when they come back, and that we are doing our best to be what they need at this time.
Lauren?
I would say, you know, embrace the season that we're in. Take it one day at a time. Know that it's temporary. At this point, you know, every day there may be a new challenge that we're facing, but you know, we get through it, and then just, you know, every day we get a brand new chance to start over. So try to find the joy in each day. Try to enjoy this time with your students, and know that it really is just this particular season of being in a pandemic during the holidays. Hopefully we'll never have to experience it again, but let's make the best of it while we can.
Valerie?
Yep. So I would say a combination of those two things, making sure that you're creating that non-judgmental place for your student where they can come to you, but also just really enjoying this time, because it probably won't come again. We hope that, just like Lauren said, but this is an extended period of time where you can maybe have some of these experiences. So enjoy them, and also be ready to support them in a way that they feel safe.
Stephen?
Yeah, so Valerie's kind of touched on this a couple of times throughout our time today, and you know, when she said this, it really hits me in the feels. But one of the things I think is helpful for us to all to remember, us included, yourselves, our students. And you know, one of my favorite books is Ginger Zee, the chief meteorologist of ABC and Good Morning America, in her book Natural Disasters. I cover them. I am one. There's a line in there that sticks with me all the time, and it says, "No matter your storm, it never rains forever. It can't, and it won't." And I think that's, you know, what we have to keep in mind at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've actually said this multiple times, probably to people on this call before, that my belief has always been, and I heard this from a pastor a long time ago, you're either getting ready to go into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're coming out of one. That's just the world that we kind of live in, is that's the mode that you sit in. And, you know, you go into crisis situations, and crisis situations are supposed to be short, and you navigate through them in a short manner. And I think one challenge is this has gone on way beyond crisis to become normal. and that puts a lot of stressors on a lot of folks. So Jay, Lauren, Valerie, Stephen, I thank you very much for your time. Parents and families, as you continue to go through the holiday season, we wish you happiness and health. We want you to stay safe. If you're just not certain where to start and you've got a question, start with the Parent Family Programs Office. Carter Fenwick is a great resource to start with, and she's well connected to all these areas: campus living, dining, student health, everybody that's within our division and even on campus. If you're not sure where to start, reach out to her in her office, pose the question. She will make sure you get to the right spot. Reach out to any of these folks if you have questions. We just have folks at ECU that are willing to help your student. We've got a great time coming in for the spring semester. We've got a new chancellor that's going to be announced soon. We've got new plans for the way that spring 2021 is going to go. We've got more quarantine and isolation space on campus. We've got more resources as far as testing that's going to be coming out. A lot of that information is going to be coming early in January. So really stay connected with us as far as how you can get information. And in the meantime, stay connected with your student too. So until we greet you again, we appreciate it. Everybody stay safe and have a wonderful holiday season.